Please, this is not an order. If you like the content, don't forget to like and subscribe our channel for more comments and discussions. All the murder cases seem to get more cruel and strange as the years pass. Whenever we hear about a new murder story, we are shocked to learn the reason for the crime or the identity of the people involved. In this video, we are going to talk about a murder case that greatly shocked London in 2021. Specifically, we are going to talk about the case of Jemma and her blue suitcase. This murder case concerns Jemma, an Australian-born Englishwoman who killed her friend Deborah Chone and transported her corpse across the country in a blue suitcase. This case is truly dismal because it shows how people can be inhumane and cruel just for money. Unfortunately, money is often the source of great conflicts that often end in murder or serious injury that causes a real handicap for the victims. Some people are ready to do anything just to earn a lot of money and be successful in life. Jemma Mitchell was 38 when she was convicted of the murder of Deborah Chone in June 2021. Her trial took place in London and was broadcast live on television, which is a rare occurrence and proves that the case greatly shocked and outraged the public. This trial of a female murderer was the first to be televised in England and all of Wales. She was sentenced to life imprisonment with 34 years without parole for killing Deborah Chone, real name Mikun Chone, and leaving her decapitated body in the woods 2 weeks later. After committing her murder, Jemma had driven more than 200 miles in a carload with blue suitcases that contained the decapitated and decomposed body of the victim. The murder of 67-year-old Deborah Chone had been planned long before. So, this was not a murder committed on a whim or by accident. It turns out that Jemma Mitchell had befriended Mrs. Chone just to get her fortune. Deborah Chone was a practitioner, and Jemma joined her group to get to know her. Mrs. Mitchell had asked Mrs. Chone to lend her the sum of £200,000 so that she could finance the repairs to her house, but when she refused, she killed him to inherit her fortune. Jemma Mitchell had organized her murder well so that she was not suspected and that all of her victims' fortune returned to her. She wrote a false will to inherit Ms. Chang's property, which was estimated at £700,000. Since she was a close friend of Deborah Chone, people weren't going to find it strange that she was going to inherit her fortune if she died. When Ms. Chone disappeared, Jemma told her neighbors that she had gone on a trip to see her family. When people asked her where she had gone on vacation, she explained to them that she had gone somewhere near the sea. However, by that time, Deborah Chone had already been killed and beheaded, and her corpse was hidden in the garden of the murderer. Jemma Mitchell committed her murder at her victim's home in Wembley, northwest London. After putting the remains of her victim in a suitcase, she traveled hundreds of miles until arriving in Devon, where she abandoned the body. Jemma was an osteopath specializing in the dissection of the human body, so she had no difficulty getting rid of the body of her victim. She had such a good command of the anatomy of the human body that she received the Hamilton Award for anatomical excellence. She even worked as an osteopath in Queensland, Australia, and then returned to the UK. Back in the UK, she could not work as an osteopath because she did not have a license from the General Osteopathic Council. Jemma Mitchell lived on her family's property with her mother and sister. This property was worth a sum of £4 million because it was very old and had belonged to her family for several generations, but it was very dilapidated and required a lot of work. Jemma had a very bad relationship with her sister and was extremely violent toward her. By dint of attacking her sister and her brother-in-law, she received a non-molestation order concerning them. After all her troubles with her family, Jemma met Deborah Chone at the church she regularly attended. Being both devout Christians, they quickly became friends and got along perfectly. Deborah Chone was of Asian origin, or more precisely, she was originally from Malaysia and had lived in the United Kingdom for over 30 years. She lived alone since she was a widow and suffered from a severe mental illness. She had been diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, which is an illness characterized primarily by the presence of delusions and auditory hallucinations, and therefore had to take antipsychotic medication. Some of Mrs. Chong's acquaintances claimed she believed Mrs. Mitchell could cure her mental illness through spiritual treatments and that she could even communicate via YouTube with King Charles III of England, who was a prince at the time. Shortly before her death, Deborah Chang's mental health had greatly deteriorated, as her behaviors seemed strange and not normal. For example, she had tried to send letters to Prince Charles and the Prime Minister, thinking they might get back to her. Mrs. Chong was well liked by church members and friends because she had a kind and very childlike personality. The reason Jemma Mitchell killed Deborah Chong was that she didn't want to provide her with financial support to make repairs to her family home. Mrs. Mitchell and her mother were defrauded by builders of the sum of £230,000 when they wanted to make repairs to their property and add a floor. Ms. Chong had promised Mitchell that she would lend her that amount of money, but sometime later she changed her mind and refused to lend her the money. She told her that it was better for her to sell the house and raise a large sum of money instead of losing money on new renovations. On June 11, 2021, Jemma Mitchell went to Deborah Chong, who lived in North London, with a blue suitcase. She had planned her murder several days in advance. After spending several hours at Ms. Hong's house, surveillance cameras caught her leaving her house with her blue suitcase. Before leaving Mrs. Chang's house, she stole several documents that could be used to write the false will that would allow her to receive her victim's fortune. Mrs. Chong was declared missing the same day of her murder by her tenant because she had not been seen since the day before. When Jemma was interrogated, she claimed that Mrs. Chong was very depressed and had gone to visit her family, which was obviously a lie. So that she would not be discovered, Jemma stole certain objects from her deceased neighbor, such as his mobile phone, to rent a car and transport the body 100 kilometers from her home. Mrs. Chang's dismembered body was found by vacationers, and an investigation was quickly opened to find the whole body. After a search that lasted 4 days, the police found Deborah's entire decomposed body, and an autopsy determined only the cause of death, which was a fractured skull. Jemma Mitchell was arrested by the police on July 6, 2021, and was questioned to find out the motive for her crime. However, she did not cooperate with the police and did not comment on her murder. Her trial took place on July 10, and she was remanded in custody until her next trial, which was to take place in September. At the September 28 trial, Mrs. Mitchell pleaded not guilty, and the judge said there would be 2 more hearings before the case was closed. One of these hearings took place in December 2021 and another in October 2022. There was enough evidence against Jemma that she could not escape the life sentence. Among the evidence against her was the fact that she worked for 7 years as an osteopath and was known to be an expert in human dissection. Also, investigators tracked her trajectory from when she entered Mrs. Chang's home on the day of the murder until she traveled to dispose of the body through surveillance cameras and provided the footage as evidence. Moreover, she had gone to the hospital the day of the murder because she had a broken finger, which she claimed was due to a door that closed on it. In reality, she may have broken her finger trying to kill her victim. Investigators were also interested in the car that Jemma rented to travel and get rid of the body. It turns out that this car broke down during her trip, and she had to call a mechanic to help her. According to the mechanic's testimony, the car contained a strong musty smell, and Jemma seemed extremely confused and stressed. The mechanic saw the blue suitcase in the trunk and thought it strange that Jemma wanted to keep the flat tire. The fake will was found in Jemma's home, and the blue suitcase that was used to transport her victim's body was found on her neighbor's roof. Considering all of this evidence, it's obvious that Jemma Mitchell is the real culprit in Deborah Chang's murder. Mitchell refused to testify in her defense and let her lawyers handle her case. Her lawyers claimed there was no DNA evidence that the body was stored in the blue suitcase and that Jemma had enough personal savings and therefore had no financial motive to commit the murder. The fact that she beheaded the body, waited 15 days to get rid of it, and maintained that she was not guilty without defending herself remains a mystery. Many wonder if the full truth about this murder will ever be uncovered. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel for more reviews and discussions. Thank you for watching.